Dust lifted in choking spirals as the wagon groaned down the main street of Dry Creek. The horses snorted, hooves striking hard against the baked earth, each step echoing against the false-fronted buildings. Store doors creaked open, boots scuffed onto porches, and eyes narrowed beneath wide brims as the town turned to see what the desert had delivered. Elias Boone stood near the hitching post, his shadow stretching long and rigid in the late sun. His jaw worked beneath his beard as he tugged once at the brim of his hat. This was the day he had been waiting on, papers signed, money wired, promises written across distance. A wife, a partner, someone to soften the silence of the ranch. The wagon rattled to a halt. The driver flicked the reins, dust rolling off his shoulders. "She's here," he called, his voice rasping like gravel. A hush fell as the canvas flap stirred. A boot appeared first, black leather, polished though road-worn. Then a swish of crimson fabric, catching sunlight like fire. She descended slow, deliberate, the weight of her presence striking harder than the desert wind. Whispers rippled. "That's Lila Devereaux. It can't be. Lord above. What's she doing here?" Elias's chest tightened. This was no timid bride from the east. Her eyes cut sharp as broken glass, lips curved with a confidence that unsettled even the drunkards leaning against the saloon rail. She stood tall in the dust, every gaze pinned to her. "Mr. Boone." Her voice carried smooth, with the husk of old whiskey and long nights. She offered a hand gloved in lace, worn thin at the seams. Elias didn't take it. His fist stayed curled at his sides, the heat pressing harder around him. "I was expecting," the words dried in his throat. "Someone else?" She finished, with the faintest trace of a smile. Across the street, a figure lingered in shadow, hat pulled low, watching. The air shifted with unease, as though the town itself knew trouble had just stepped off that wagon. The driver snapped his reins, the wagon creaked away, and the silence that followed weighed heavier than gunmetal. Lila Devereaux stood where she'd planted her boots, unshaken, dust rising at her hem. The wrong bride, and yet the only one who had come. The chicken coop door slammed, feathers scattering as Lila cursed under her breath. She wiped sweat from her brow, dress hemmed dark with dirt, hands raw from feed buckets. From the corral, Elias watched in silence, leaning heavy on the fence rail, the brim of his hat shadowing his eyes. The cattle bawled restless in the heat. Lila pushed through them with stubborn steps, her crimson dress torn at the sleeve, boots sinking in dry earth. A jeer drifted from the road, where two riders slowed their horses to gawk. Didn't think she'd last a week. Not with that kind of past. Their laughter trailed away in the dust. Lila's jaw tightened, but she said nothing, only shouldered another bale of hay until her arms shook. That night, at the long table, Elias sat across from her, the lantern's flame drawing lines across his weathered face. "You don't belong here," he said finally, his fork untouched. Her eyes lifted, calm but sharp. "Neither do you. Not anymore. You hide behind ghosts." The chair scraped as he stood, but before he could answer, a thunder of hooves broke the silence. Dogs barked, the barn lantern swayed. Elias pushed through the door, rifle in hand. 5 riders stood at the fence line, the lead man tall, coat black as coal, face like carved stone. "Mason Creed." His voice carried low, dangerous. "You've got something that belongs to me." Lila stepped into the doorway, the lantern light catching her face. Creed's smile was thin, cruel. "There she is. Thought you could run forever, darling." Elias raised a rifle. "She's under my roof. That's all there is to it." Creed's gaze slid to him, cold and amused. "Then you've bought yourself a fight. We'll be back." The riders wheeled their horses, dust rising thick in their wake. Silence settled heavy once more, broken only by the nervous shifting of cattle in the dark. Elias lowered the rifle, his hands tight on the stock. Lila stood unmoving, her shadow long against the wall, eyes fixed on the horizon where Creed had gone. No fear showed there, only a steadiness that unsettled him more than the threat itself. The barn roof glowed red against the night, flames snapping high as cattle bellowed in terror. Elias dragged water from the trough, his arms straining, while Lila leveled a rifle at the darkness beyond the fence. Shadows of riders flickered against the firelight, their laughter carrying thin and cruel across the fields. A shot cracked, the bullet splintering wood inches from her head. She didn't flinch, just returned fire, her aim clean, the muzzle flash lighting her face like lightning. Silence followed, broken only by the roar of burning hay. The riders melted back into the hills, leaving the night heavy with smoke. By dawn, blackened beams smoldered. Elias stood among the ruin, shoulders sagging. Lila approached, rifle slung casual across her back. "They'll come again," she said, voice steady, eyes sharp. He studied her, the ash clinging to her dress, the determination set in her jaw. "You handle that gun like you were born to it." Her gaze held his. "I was." She knelt, drew lines in the dirt with her finger, positions, angles, cover. "Your men are green. If they're going to survive, they'll learn fast." By afternoon, the ranch hands gathered. Lila barked orders, showing how to sight a rifle, how to steady a hand against fear. She corrected stances with a sharp push, scolded mistakes with a voice like iron. Elias watched from the fence, torn between disbelief and something darker, admiration. When the drills ended, the men drifted off, muttering about the woman who taught them more in an hour than they'd learned in years. Lila stayed by the fire, gaze fixed on the horizon where the hills bled into shadow. Elias joined her. "You were someone else before all this." She poked the fire, sparks drifting. "Once." Her voice thinned, soft as the wind. "Daughter of a lawman. He died standing tall, and I was left to crawl. I swore I'd never be powerless again." The night grew still. In the silence, Elias saw her differently. Not a burden, not a scandal, but forged in fire the same way steel is tempered. The horizon flickered with torchlight. Creed's men were gathering. The storm was coming. Sunrise bled across the desert, the sky painted in fire. Dust lifted in waves as Mason Creed and his riders thundered toward the Boone Ranch, rifles glinting, faces set hard with bloodlust. The ground trembled beneath hooves, each beat a drum roll for death. At the gate, Lila stood alone, crimson dress torn, hair whipped by the wind, rifle cradled steady in her arms. Behind her, the ranch hands shifted nervously, Elias among them, jaw tight. Creed reined up, black coat flaring. "Step aside, Boone. That woman's mine." Lila's voice cut clean through the morning. "You never owned me, Creed, and you never will." Laughter rolled from the gang, cruel and sharp. Creed smirked, spitting into the dust. "You think you're more than what you were? Just a whore with a gun." The hammer clicked back on her rifle. "That's all it takes." The first shot cracked, echoing against the canyon walls. One rider dropped before he could draw, tumbling hard into the dirt. Another followed, chest blooming red. Chaos erupted, guns fired, horses screamed, the air thick with smoke. Elias fired from the porch, men beside him, but it was Lila who cut the fight open. Calm as the desert sun, she dropped Creed's men one by one, her aim unerring, her stance unshaken. Each shot carried not desperation, but judgment. Soon only Creed remained, circling slow, pistol raised. He dismounted, boots crunching as he faced her in the settling dust. "You don't scare me, girl." She stepped forward, rifle steady, eyes cold. "I'm not here to scare you." Their guns barked in the same breath. Creed's bullet tore her sleeve. Hers struck true, carving him down into the dirt. His pistol slipped from his hand, his body still as the silence that followed. The townsfolk, drawn by the gunfire, gathered at the fence line, eyes wide. They saw not a prostitute, not a scandal, but a woman carved from iron and loss, standing over the ruin of violence. Elias lowered his rifle, gaze fixed on her with something like reverence. And when the dust settled, an old voice would tell it so. That day, Dry Creek learned that legends don't always ride in on white horses. Sometimes they step off a wagon in crimson, carrying the weight of fire, and leave behind a story that never dies.